Hello and welcome to this video where we're gonna go through the second chapter of Think Yourself Rich, which is a book by Dr. Joseph Murphy. Dr. Murphy was a student of Abdullah, who was also the mentor of Neville Goddard, so there's bound to be some overlap in their core ideas. However, Dr. Murphy's teachings are a lot more direct and simple in their messages. So each of these chapters are divided into smaller sections, with each section covering an example and also a technique corresponding to that. So I'm going to read through the sections and then share my own ideas on the topic and compare it to some of Neville Goddard's teachings. Now, I already made the first chapter, the video on the first chapter, so you might want to check that out first. Although each of these lessons are distinct, they aren't written in any chronological order. So you can go through the second chapter first or any other successive chapters first and read them in any order you like. So let's begin. Chapter 2: How to tap the miracle power at once that makes you rich. The Bible says, "If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth." Mark chapter 9 verse 23. To believe is to accept something as true. It is to make alive the truths of God by feeling the reality of them in your heart. This is much more than a conscious or theoretical assent. It means that you must feel the truth of what you affirm in your heart. It is belief in people's minds that determines the difference between success and failure, health and sickness, happiness and unhappiness, wealth and poverty. Wealth is a state of mind, just as poverty is a state of mind. You are truly rich when you are acquainted with the infinite presence and power within you that people call God. You are truly rich when you know that your thought is creative, that what you feel you attract, and that what you imagine you become. You are rich when you know the creative process of your mind, which is that whatever you impress on your subconscious mind will be projected on the screen of space as form, function, experience, and events. Now, in this introductory section, Dr. Murphy talks about the power of belief and the power of feeling the reality of what you desire as something that is already done. Now, he doesn't talk about any specific technique. He doesn't advise you to repeat certain words mindlessly or just write it down. He specifically focuses on the feeling, and that it is the feeling and the emotion behind the reality, the experience of already having it, that connects you to the infinite. This sentence, "This is much more than a conscious or theoretical assent," is extremely important to understand, because we typically have a very robotic or theoretical understanding of cause and effect in our world, right? So when you're starting a computer or when you're riding a vehicle, you have this very mechanical understanding of how it works. You press a button and the car starts, the car turns on. And the same thing with a computer or your cell phone. But with regards to manifestation and feeling things into existence, you must understand that you can't really fake feeling, and there's no substitute for conjuring the exact emotions of your desires fulfilled. You can't really fool yourself in that regard. Now, the next section: How she discovered the riches within. A young graphic designer, Sophie C., came up to me after a lecture. She looked and sounded upset, even angry. "I'm completely blocked on a major project," she burst out. "If I blow it, my whole career could go down the tubes. I've been praying continually for help in overcoming my problems, just the way you said, but it hasn't helped a bit. If anything, I'm in worse shape. What's the matter with your technique? Why doesn't it work the way it's supposed to?" "Sophie," I began, "let's say you are at a computer working hard on your project. Would it help if your boss stood behind you every minute making suggestions?" "Of course not," she replied. "I couldn't work that way." "Not even if they were good suggestions?" I continued. "Not even then," she said. "The best thing she can do is make sure I know what I have to accomplish, then give me the space I need to do it. If you're always jiggling my elbow, I'm bound to goof up. That is so obvious. I agree, I said, and it's exactly the same with your subconscious. By praying continually, you're hovering next to your subconscious, giving it one suggestion after another and keeping it from getting on with its work. What you really impress on it is anxiety and doubt about its ability to accomplish the task you've set. Visualize the outcome you desire as feelingly and completely as possible, then leave the job of bringing it about to the infinite intelligence of your subconscious mind. I think I see what you mean, Sophie said slowly, but I've gotten so much in the habit of praying for help. I guess I thought the more I prayed, the stronger the effect. How do I break the habit? There's a powerful way to break such a fixation spell, I replied. You should start to unleash the spiritual riches within yourself by setting aside 1 or 2 moments during the day to pray for someone else who has serious problems. It might be a friend, a neighbor, a business associate, or even someone you've heard about on TV. The important point is that you use no willpower or mental coercion in this mental or spiritual exercise. Sophie went away, determined to try the approach I had suggested. A few days later, she called in excitement. That morning, she had found herself wide awake an hour before the alarm went off. In a mind as clear and complete as could be, was an original way to deal with the crucial project. She went to her computer at once. By her usual breakfast hour, she had finished the section of the project that had been giving her trouble for so long. So in this section, Dr. Murphy shares 2 key elements. The first one is the concept of digging the soil to check if the seed is germinating constantly and ending up interfering with the growth. This example is commonly discussed in law of attraction circles, where we explore why it's important to have faith and how the lack of faith and constantly asking and constantly checking the status of your manifestations progress can actually harm the process. So let's say you plant a seed in the soil, and the correct way to go about it is making sure there's enough sunlight and water and letting the seed rest inside the soil. Just leave it alone and nature do its work. But then there's the part of you that wants to constantly check whether or not the process is working. There's this itch, paranoia, whatever you want to call it, which is a consequence of this fear programming, and you secretly believing that you being extra paranoid and extra concerned will actually contribute to the overall process. And now you tell yourself that it's just you verifying and being a perfectionist in some sense, but what ends up happening is that you unknowingly interfere with the process. If you look closely, life always requires us to take these leaps of faith, whether you're crossing the road or climbing the ladder, but we don't think of it consciously. We don't really concern ourselves with the mathematical probability of things going wrong, and this is this exact faith which keeps us sane and together, and it also works in our favor, right? It's almost a miracle that how much risk we take on a daily basis, and yet we are here today, alive and well. So belief is a crucial part of not just manifestation but our everyday lives. Now in the second section, Dr. Murphy addresses a question that Sophie asks regarding how to combat this paranoia, this programming where we are constantly making sure whether things are working out perfectly, right? There's this compulsion. So how do we deal with it? Dr. Murphy suggests that Sophie uses the power of her subconscious mind to wish for the well-being of someone else, whether it's a relative or a friend, and that way she'll be able to realize the power of her own subconscious mind without being desperate, because it's not possible to be desperate in behalf of someone else. Now once she realizes the power of her subconscious mind that way, she'll have a much more faith in her own powers and sort of reprogram this idea that you need to constantly verify and make sure for things to work out, right? So once you have enough faith, you'll just be able to trust your own manifestations, the process, or at least you'll be one step closer to having complete faith in the powers of your own subconscious mind. Now, the next section, she discovered the riches of a creative thought. A young woman, Marie G, was seriously worried about her mother, who suffered from chronic stomach pains. The mother's doctor had tried a variety of medications, but none of them relieved her distress. An examination of the gastrointestinal system with a fiber optic probe showed signs of irritation, but did not reveal the cause of the irritation. Marie decided that only the healing power of the subconscious mind could help her mother. She began to set aside half an hour every morning and evening to pray for her mother's stomach. She focused on the concept that her mother's digestive system was a divine idea and therefore perfect. Unfortunately, Marie's mother's condition did not improve. Still more upsetting, Marie began to have stomach trouble herself. Marie came to me and begged me to say where she had gone wrong. Why had her prayer caused her subconscious to manifest sickness instead of the desired health? By praying as you did, I explained, you were actually identifying with your mother's illness. You were even keeping a regular date with it, twice a day. What you wanted was to get rid of it, but what you were doing was holding onto it. Now here we see the story of a young woman, Marie G, who was aware of the power of her subconscious mind and tried to manifest her mother out of chronic stomach pains. She ended up manifesting the opposite and also started having her own stomach issues instead of healing her mother's. After consulting with Dr. Murphy, she realized that she was focusing on the wrong aspect. Now you must be familiar with the concept of what you focus on grows. So in her prayers, Marie was focusing on the specific body part that she was trying to heal instead of taking a holistic approach to healing and tapping into this infinite healing capabilities of her subconscious mind. So you might ask, is it because of the surgical approach she took that ended up her manifestation backfiring? So is it really about focusing on the specific body part, or like we should focus on the entire thing? Is it really about how broad you should go, or is the problem with something else, right? If you're trying to manifest $100,000, should you focus on the number itself, or should you focus on infinite abundance? So is it really about the mathematical or the precision aspect of things? When it comes to health and ailments of that nature, it's really hard to separate a local body part from the disease itself. So suppose you have a headache and you're trying to cure headache, right? You are visualizing the headache disappearing or something of that nature. You realize that in the back of your mind, you'll always have that, you'll always focus on the fact that you already have a headache. So your end state takes into consideration the headache itself. So you end up manifesting more of the headache. The subconscious mind doesn't understand the language of negatives. So when you say, I'm healed from headache, it's focusing on the headache as much as it's focusing on the healing thing. In fact, the thing is that it can't really focus on both at the same time. You can't serve two masters, like Neville said. So since you are already aware of the headache being there, and now you're focusing on these two masters simultaneously, the master that's winning is the headache, right? So you are having more of the headache. So in this case, in this example, when she's focusing on her mother's chronic stomach pains being relieved, she's actually ending up focusing on chronic stomach pains. So your subconscious mind is isolating the subject of your affirmations, and that's chronic stomach pains, right? And this is a very important example. In fact, this is one of the most important examples so far in this entire discussion, including the previous video, because this is all about the subtle nature of our subconscious response and the language it understands, as opposed to the very complicated manner in which our 3D mind works, right? From a conscious frame of reference, holistic abundant healing and healing from a disease are the exact exact same thing, but for the subconscious mind, they aren't the same, as we learned from this example, right? And in the next section, we're going to learn how she finally healed her mother and herself out of the problem. The next section is connected, so I'm going to continue. How her creative thought healed. At my suggestion, Marie G changed her approach. She carefully avoided dwelling on specific organs of the body and their disorders. Instead, she identified with the infinite healing presence in the subconscious mind. She began to claim quietly, feelingly, and lovingly that the healing presence and intelligence in the subconscious, which created her mother's body, was vitalizing, healing, and restoring her whole being into harmony, health, peace, and wholeness. She meditated quietly on these ideas for a short period of time each night before going to sleep. The results were remarkable. Her own stomach distress cleared up immediately, and her mother's problems showed a marked and steady improvement. So in focusing on the holistic healing side of things, Marie ended up healing herself and her mother in the process. So this sheds light on the fact that there's only a handful of feelings with regards to all these areas, like whether it's your health, wealth, love, relationship, general abundance, strength, right? Intelligence. If you were to list some of these traits and you were to focus on the holistic abundance with regards to each of these areas, you would achieve the same results, and in fact you would achieve much more, you would achieve better results compared to if you were to focus on specific things. And with regards to disease, like we saw in this example, that actually work against us if we are unable to really isolate and identify the subject of our affirmations. So in focusing on healing, Marie was focusing on the absolute end state, the absolute infinite healing, which is the natural state of your body, right? So this was like this infinite abundance mindset or the feeling is independent of any specific disease. So whether you have a headache or a bodily injury, if you focus on overall well-being, overall physical well-being, or just healing in general, you'll finally be able to occupy the end state and your 3D reality will catch up to your imagination. Now, the next section, sympathy versus compassion. The reason Marie G became ill while praying for her mother was because she was actually sympathizing with her. We are taught that sympathy is a wonderful quality and that we should all cultivate it. This is an error. Sympathy is like spotting someone trapped in a pool of quicksand and wading in to share their danger. A better reaction, one of compassion, would be to stay on firm ground and throw the person a rope or tree branch. When through sympathy we accede to the negative or baleful aspects of a person's situation or condition, we tend to aggravate the problem. The reason for this is that the subconscious magnifies exceedingly whatever we focus our attention on. So if you look at these two words, sympathy and compassion, and if we focus on the semantics of it, the two might mean the exact same, and we might use them interchangeably in our daily lives when we are expressing ourselves, right? You have sympathy for a poor person, and that automatically implies that you are compassionate towards that poor person. But the emotional side of things, it's quite different, right? When you're sympathizing with someone, you are really reaffirming their existing state of poverty or their existing state of illness, and you are creating this illusion that you are actually helping them in that regard, but you are actually perpetuating their state, even though there's this momentary feeling of compassion as a that the other person feels as a consequence of your sympathy. But true compassion would be to focus on the state where they are relieved of their current ailments or their current state of poverty. And Dr. Murphy describes sympathy like spotting someone trapped in a pool of quicksand and wading in to share their danger. So you jumping in to the quicksand in order to help them sounds very self-sacrificing and sounds very selfless, and it might be, but in terms of actual benefit, a better reaction where your compassion would actually translate to something positive would be if you were to stay on a firm ground and throw the person a rope or a tree branch, and so that you can help them climb out of the misery. This is such a brilliant example because it clears so many misconceptions about some of the things, some of these traps we often get stuck in our lives. For example, humility, right? Or excess humility, where you are borderline expressing your low self-esteem, right? That in declaring yourself as someone who's no good, you end up reaffirming that state to yourself. But to the outside world, you are being this humble guy who's above their own pride or things of that nature. So some of these emotions are a lot more complicated, a lot more nuanced than the simplified understanding, right? The way we were taught growing up. So the next section, giving the riches of the infinite to the sick person. All the riches of the infinite, such as inspiration, guidance, faith, abundance, and security, are within you. When you visit people who are sick, you lift them up in your thoughts and feelings. Give them a transfusion of faith and confidence in the healing power of the subconscious. Remember that with God, all things are possible. Visualize them as whole, radiant, joyous, and free. To feel sorry for the ill person and to commiserate with him or her is to drag the person down. This is a negative approach. Be compassionate and call forth the infinite healing presence in the subconscious, which can heal, bless, and restore both mind and body. He restoreth my soul. Psalm chapter 23 verse 3. So here Dr. Joseph Murphy says to feel sorry for the ill person and to commiserate with him or her is to drag the person down. So when you're sympathizing with a person, when you're bringing these negative emotions of sorrow or sadness and expecting the other person to feel helped by that, you're actually subscribing to a very common fallacy that we all have been programmed with, right? When you feel sorry for an ill person, you're essentially dragging the other person down further, or at least at the very best, you're perpetuating their existing state of poverty. Instead, what you should do is have faith and confidence in the healing power and wish abundance. Now, this takes a little bit of programming, a little bit of practice, because it's in our second nature to go the other sympathy route. The next section. You are the master of your thoughts, not the servant. Your thought is creative. Every thought tends to manifest itself and causes your subconscious mind to respond according to the nature of the thought. You can direct and steer your thoughts just as you steer your car. Thoughts are things, material changes in the pattern of the universe. Your thought image is a reality in your mind and the basis for what we call external reality. A car is a solid material object, but if every car in the world suddenly vanished, an automotive engineer could quickly redesign the vehicle based on the thought image in his or her mind. In a short while, we could again have millions of cars. Your thought is the most powerful instrument you have to work with, infinitely more powerful than the latest computer. It pays fabulous dividends to learn to direct your thoughts wisely, constructively, and judiciously. Your thought works with mathematical exactitude. It creates limitation and lack if you dwell on ideas of poverty, and it brings expansion, growth, and prosperity when you think along these lines. So what he says is that thought precedes material creation. So before the creation of every material object you see in this universe, it was first thought out in the mind of someone, either directly or indirectly. So this thought is being referred to as thought image. So if suddenly all the cars in the world vanished, as in the material stuff, the tangible cars you see on the road just vanished, we would still have the idea, the thought, and all the knowledge surrounding its creation, right? And all the engineers with that knowledge, they could recreate those cars again. So you see that it's the thought that fundamentally matters more than the more than the actual object. Even though in science we consider energy and material as two separate stuff, at least in the classical interpretation. Before quantum physics came along and we realized that the two are really the same thing. We used to think previously that the energy and material are just the two kinds of substance that exist in the universe, and then those two are just different from one another. But it's every material stuff you see in the universe was actually existing in the form of energy, and thought is an energy of some sort, right? And he also says that since your thought is the most powerful instrument there is in the universe, even more powerful than the latest computer, it can also create limitations and lack if you do. So the limitations you experience in reality came from this exact same imagination that creates abundance in your life. So limitations aren't external, in the sense there isn't something outside of you that's limiting the capabilities of your imagination. Rather, it's the very thought that's creating everything around you, that's creating the abundance, is also responsible for the limitation, the lack. And so depending on how we steer this ship of our own thoughts, we'll either find ourselves dwelling in these ideas of poverty or bring expansion, growth, and prosperity, if we were to think along those lines. So the next part, become a good executive. It takes a good executive to draw forth the riches of the subconscious mind. You can tell good executives by the way they handle tasks. They have the mental acumen and sagacity to pick the best person for the task and delegate it to him or her. Once they have passed the task along, they keep their hands off and give the other person enough space to get on with it. Poor executives, on the other hand, whether in business, science, art, industry, or education, are constantly meddling with the pie they've asked others to bake. When you pray, you must be a good executive. Learn to delegate authority to your subconscious mind. It knows all and sees all. It will bring your prayer to pass in its own way. When you pray or seek an answer, turn your request or desire over to your subconscious mind with complete faith and confidence, knowing that whatever is conveyed to the subconscious will come to pass. How do you know if you have really turned your requests over with faith and confidence? By the way you feel. If you constantly wonder how, when, where, and through what source your prayer will be answered, if you're anxious and apprehensive, you do not really trust the wisdom of your subconscious. Stop nagging your subconscious. The negativity of your worries will tend to bring forth fruit after its kind. When you think of your desire, lightness of touch is important. Remind yourself that infinite intelligence is taking care of it in divine order. So this is again the reiteration of a previously discussed concept where Dr. Murphy asks us to trust in the power of our imagination and not to dig up already planted seeds, right? Just like an executive who delegates important tasks and then trusts that the subordinates will complete them in due time, instead of constantly meddling and micromanaging every single step of the process. You must learn to trust your subconscious in that once you've affirmed or once you've really focused on the end state, that your final desire is already created, and you need not constantly check every single second of the day to make sure that the methods you've used or the techniques you've used were correct or not. So the next section, a thought is the magnet. Lisa M is a very successful stockbroker. She told me that she owes all her success to the fact that she maintains a mental picture of success in her work. This acts as a sort of magnet that attracts to her the clients and conditions that accurately correspond to her thoughts and feelings. This is her prayer every morning. I am a mental and spiritual magnet. I draw to me all those people who want and need what I have to offer. There is a divine exchange of ideas between us. They are blessed and I am blessed. I decree harmony, abundance, right action, and inspiration, and I know my subconscious mind accepts these truths. Lisa finds herself divinely led and directed in all she does. Her subconscious mind is the seat of habit. As she continues to claim divine guidance, right action, and abundance regularly and systematically, she is under a subconscious compulsion to do, speak, and act in the right way. So this is a fairly simple example where a successful stockbroker named Lisa M maintains her end state and a mental picture of success in her work, and as a consequence, her subconscious mind becomes a magnet that attracts different clients' conditions that correspond to her thoughts and feelings. Now her affirmation is, I'm a mental and spiritual magnet. I draw to me all those people who want and need what I have to offer. There's a divine exchange of ideas between us. They are blessed and I am blessed. I decree harmony, abundance, right action, and inspiration, and I know my subconscious mind accept these truths. You see that this is quite broad and contains all kinds of scenarios that with regards to her success in career, right? And she receives different forms of inspirations, and her subconscious mind steers her in the right direction that leads us to different scenarios of success. Now the next part, how he conquered by surrendering. I recently had a long conversation with a prominent banker, Brendan O. A friend had told him that I might be able to help him give up tobacco. Though skeptical, he was desperate enough to try anything. As we talked, I began to see that he was involved in waging a daily war with the world and its conditions. He saw every associate as a possible rival and pored over their every word for hints of what hostile, underhanded act to expect from them. As he read the business section of the paper each morning, he muttered curses. Each new development felt like a blow aimed directly at him. It is no wonder that he was a heavy smoker. Eventually, his doctor told him he had to quit. He poo-pooed the idea. Then one day, breathlessness forced him to quit his weekly tennis game while he was ahead. That was enough to make him decide to stop. Of course, he approached the task of quitting smoking the same way he approached everything else, as a battle. It didn't work. The harder he tried to quit, the more restless and irritable he became, and the more he felt the urge to smoke. His nerves were shot. He began to make risky business decisions and to act toward his superiors as badly as he did to those under him. Soon, his entire career was in serious danger. By the time we spoke, he was beginning to consider the idea of ending it all. You were like someone who has strayed into a patch of quicksand, I told him. The harder you struggle, the deeper you sink, not just with the smoking, though that is very important. The war you think you are waging against the world, you are really waging against your own subconscious mind. Every day you tell it that life is lull of conflict and hostility, and every day it takes you at your word and makes manifest the conditions you expect. But I really want to stop smoking, Brendan protested. I don't doubt it, I replied, but you're overlooking a basic law of mind. When your desire and imagination are in conflict, your imagination always wins. You imagine yourself struggling against tobacco and you provoke that very struggle. Maybe so, he said, but now I'm in the thick of it and I can't afford to lose. We're talking about my life and health that are at stake. What do I have to do to win this battle? I took a deep breath. This was not going to be easy. You have to surrender, I told him. Give up. Abandon the struggle. Never, he broke in. Roll over and play dead? Never. I didn't say play dead, I said calmly. What you must do is find the path to invoking a greater power, and the entrance to that path lies in the opposite direction from struggle. Suddenly, his shoulders slumped. I don't get it, he said in a low voice, but I'm ready to try anything. What do I do now? So here we see a man who subscribed to this idea that life is a battle and that everything around him is a zero-sum game. Now, banking is considered a very competitive industry, and bankers are often portrayed in films and in pop culture as people who are very busy with life, constantly struggling, constantly fighting the world. So it's very easy to consider everyone around you as your own rival and gain this hostile attitude towards people around you, since they often remind you of what you must overcome, right? But Dr. Murphy says that every battle you wage against the aspects of your world is a battle against your own subconscious mind, because the two are inseparable. So when you have an addiction of some sort, the most instinctual way or the most natural solution that comes to our mind is to fight against it, to use our willpower to overcome this subconscious programming, right? So you're using your conscious mind to fight against the subconscious, and no wonder we fail at it, right? Instead, if you were to focus on you surpassing that state or being in the end state where you aren't an addict anymore, right, you would have a very smooth sail and you wouldn't have to fight with your reality, because this often comes at a cost, right? And so this whole thing against fighting your reality isn't all that black and white, because you'll see some people who end up holding their addictions at bay for a while. But so I'm not saying that the conscious mind is an absolute is absolutely futile, but it's like you're using a very ineffective resource when you have like a loaded weapon, an absolute powerhouse at your disposal, right? And so in using your subconscious mind, it's a win-win situation in the sense that you get a lot of return for your efforts. So in the next section, we see how Brendan came to a solution after consulting with Dr. Murphy. He found the quiet path to get things done. At my suggestion, Brendan held a session with himself twice a day, on first getting up and just before going to sleep. He sat in a quiet place and breathed calmly and steadily until he felt himself become relaxed and receptive. Then he affirmed and visualized as follows: freedom and peace of mind are mine now. I know that as I believe and affirm these truths, they are sinking down into my subconscious mind. I will be under compulsion to give up cigarettes, as the law of my subconscious is compulsion. In my imagination, I see my doctor before me. He has just finished examining me and is congratulating me on my freedom from the habit and on my perfect health. As these sessions continued, he got a response from his subconscious. His desire to smoke faded until it was gone. He had succeeded in impregnating his deeper mind with his habitual thinking and visualizing. The next time he saw his doctor, he learned that the worrisome symptoms had faded as well. He was in excellent health. Brendan's new approach to his subconscious mind had more widespread effects too. He found himself calmer and more collegial at work, and his business judgment improved. He realized now that it is a quiet mind that gets things done. Though it is months since he last felt the desire to smoke, he continues to hold sessions with himself twice a day. He quiets his body and tells it to be still and relaxed. It has to obey. When his conscious mind is quiet, calm, peaceful, and receptive, the wisdom of his subconscious rises to the surface and he receives marvelous answers and solutions. So Brendan solved the issue by a combination of affirmation and visualization technique prescribed by Dr. Murphy. So the first two are like affirmations for the visualization itself, right? Freedom and peace of mind are mine now. I know that as I believe and affirm these truths, they are sinking down into my subconscious mind. And so the visualization is, in my imagination, I see my doctor before me. He sees a doctor who's just finished examining him, and then he's congratulating him on his freedom from the habit and on his perfect health. So this is thinking from the end. So this incident implies that he has already successfully eliminated all of his health problems and is in perfect health. So this is also similar to Neville Goddard's thinking from the end state. So Brendan imagines a scene that would occur only if he's healed from his present situation. As a consequence, his desire to smoke, or this addiction he had, started fading away, right? So he did not have to fight it. Instead of trying to uproot a tree of some sort, the addiction slowly started fading away, and his deeper subconscious mind started adapting to this change. Now, this approach he had towards life and general solution towards his problems, which is using his subconscious mind, it had a much more widespread effect. He was much more calmer, more friendly at work, and his natural judgments with regards to business had improved. So he came to realize that it was his subconscious mind that was responsible for driving him, that was largely responsible for driving him from one spot to another. So we must use the subconscious mind not just to solve problems per se, not just to overcome, and not just use it like medicine of some sort, but use it in a much more holistic, versatile manner, right? If your subconscious and conscious mind are out of alignment, in that you are trying to improve at a conscious level, but your subconscious has been programmed to think negatively, then your subconscious will always win. Now, the next part, the riches of letting go and letting God help. A psychologist named Sylvia B. got dragged into a bitter and complex legal case involving a former patient. The many documents and frequent court appearances became a terrible drain on her time and energy. When she tried to be conscientious about her participation, she found that she had no room left for living her own life. At last, she realized that she was neglecting the greatest power she had available to her. She turned to her subconscious and prayed as follows: Divine wisdom and divine right action of my subconscious, solve this problem. I release the matter and let it go. Whenever she had to get in touch with her attorney or others involved in the case, she would silently decree, the God presence within me is all-wise and is taking care of this in divine order. I'm not keeping tabs on the God presence within as to how, when, where, or through what source this will be solved. I let go and let God take care of it. The sequel to her new attitude of mind was interesting. Her former patient admitted fault and begged her forgiveness. Suit was dismissed immediately. There was a divine adjustment and she was set free from all legal entanglements. Now, unlike the previous example, here we see a psychologist using the power of her subconscious mind to overcome a situation that's seemingly external to her, right? So the last one was internal, right? A problem that occurred within himself, right? Brendan's problem was internal, but here she was facing some core troubles and it became a terrible drain on her time and energy, and she had very little to no time left in her own life, and this case was becoming a hassle and was draining, was consuming her life. And so she turned to her subconscious mind and prayed, and without any external action, the person who was suing her admitted her own fault and dismissed. So it was almost magical, right? Some of these things are some of these success stories can be quite miraculous relative to some others that look a lot more ordinary in comparison. But the thing is that we can't really comprehend how our subconscious mind triggers different chains of events, and so that's the whole reason we must let go and let the God, or the larger I am, which is still I am, of which our body is a small part, take care of our problems. So it was divine adjustment through her subconscious affirmation that set her free from all legal entanglements. Now, the next section. The future can be wonderful for you. Do not waste your energy and vital substance by brooding over old peeves, grudges, and grievances. I do so is like ripping open a grave. All you find is a skeleton. Focus your attention on the good things of life. Realize that the future will be wonderful because your harmonious thoughts will germinate and grow, bringing forth wonderful fruit, health, happiness, abundance, and peace of mind. Draw a thick line under the past, then turn the page. Never mentally touch any negative experience or trauma that has happened in the past. Remain faithful to this mental attitude and realize that as you change your present thoughts, and keep them changed, you will change your destiny. So this section focuses on the importance of letting go of our past from a spiritual and functional perspective. And normally we have a very psychological take, and the argument is that you can't change your past, right? And this argument is weak in comparison to what actually happens when you focus on the past. So you're not just reliving old traumas, but rather you are perpetuating it in your current reality. So when you focus on good things of life, you will realize that your future can be wonderful because your reality is in harmony with your thoughts, and your thoughts germinate, it grows, bringing forth wonderful health, happiness, abundance, and peace of mind. So if you consciously draw this thick line that this is your past, and then learn to start again and never mentally touch any negative experience. And this is something that must be done at a subconscious level, because trauma or PTSD or things of that nature are things that clearly demonstrate the power differences between your subconscious and your conscious, right? No man ever wants to consciously create past experiences, but since their subconscious mind is constantly working, right, it's far more powerful. You're constantly thinking of your past, and in doing so, you are creating some of those ideas or some similar experience, even though you might not experience those exact same events, but you are kind of ruining your current reality. So you must have some form of you must integrate positive thoughts, focusing on what you want through your meditations and different practices. So the next section, she discovered the riches of scientific prayer. Anna H. came to me distraught and highly agitated. Her 18-year-old son had left home following an argument with his father. He dropped out of college and wrote that he was planning to join a cult. Anna was so frantic that a doctor put her on powerful tranquilizers and antidepressants. She was also resorting to sleeping pills almost every night. During our conversation, I tried to point out a few simple truths. You do not own your son, I told her. Yes, he came through you, but not by you. The life principle is our common progenitor. We are all children of the one father or self-originating spirit. Your son is here to grow, to expand, and to overcome difficulties, challenges, and problems. He must discover for himself the powers within him. It is up to him to release his talents to the world. You can't help him by mental excitation, anger, and resentment, only through love, understanding, and right action. By the end of our conversation, Anna had decided to release her son completely. Sincerely, feelingly, and with deep confidence, she decreed as follows: I lose my son to God completely. He is divinely guided in all his ways, and divine wisdom anoints his intellect. Divine law and order reigns supreme in his life. He is guided to his true place and is expressing himself at his highest level. I lose him and let him go. She remained faithful to this prayer. Twice every day, she claimed peace, harmony, joy, and divine love for her son and for herself. Some weeks later, she got a phone call from her son. He had become disillusioned with his new associates. He realized that their only goal was to mold his thoughts to fit their own. They had no intention to let himself find and be himself. He was returning to college with the goal of learning more about the spiritual wisdom of the ages. Since then, Anna's son has done well in his scholastic work. He has also started meditating daily and writing some of the thoughts that come to him in meditation. He communicates frequently with both his parents, but his mother no longer feels possessive. She has discovered the riches of divine love and freedom. When Anna stopped thinking from the standpoint of circumstances and conditions, she began to discover that interior standpoint where there are no circumstances. From there, she was able to decree what conditions should be according to divine law and order. then she let the wisdom of her subconscious take care of it. So the lesson from this example is essentially an extension of the previously discussed concept of trusting the higher self or your subconscious mind, and the futility of constantly fighting against your external reality, because everything that originates is from within you, right? Everything you see, including your own parents, your own sons, are essentially extensions of you, which is also the idea that everyone is you pushed out by Neville Goddard. Dr. Murphy also sheds light on some of our three-dimensional ideas and also our attachment styles, right? So you see that the mother-son relationship is one of the most profound and closest that exists in our world. But even taking that into consideration, a mother doesn't really own her son, because both the mother and the son are essentially part of the same larger consciousness, right? We are all children of the one father or self-originating spirit. At this three-dimensional level, at the level of individuals, we are independent human beings, no matter how close we are to another, right? So her son was here to grow, to expand, to overcome difficulties, to explore life along his own terms, at his own pace. So it's important. So this advice that he gave to her was more life advice, was more kind of psychological. But then he also pointed out that any form of influence or help that she can give him was only through love, understanding, and right action, and not mental excitation, anger, or resentment, which these negative emotions are the equivalent of fighting a reality. Like in that example of Brendan fighting against his addiction, right? So only through love, understanding, and right action can we deal with our reality. And so after the conversation had ended, Anna decided to let go of all her attachments, of all her negative attachments towards his son and her controlling nature, and she affirmed that I lose my son to God completely. He is divinely guided in all his ways, and divine wisdom anoints his intellect. Divine law and order reigns supreme in his life. He is guided to his true place and is expressing himself at his highest level. So she uttered this prayer and twice every day, right? And then she slowly realized that all of her affirmations was being reflected in a 3D reality, and her son slowly started stepping out of the bad company and started gravitating toward the more scholastic academic life and inculcating these positive habits of meditating, writing, communicating, everything she secretly wished for but was fighting to achieve those in her son. So we also learn that letting go isn't always about releasing the desire itself, right? Even though there's this slight I don't care attitude towards that, but I won't really put it that way. But so like when she's not really expecting any concrete results, when she isn't desperate to get those results in her son, she ends up getting those and even more than what she'd initially wished for while she was fighting it. The next section: how to think richly, think regularly and systematically of life, illumination, inspirations, harmony, prosperity, happiness, peace, and the life more abundant. Think these truths rather than this or that condition on them. Trust the operations of your subconscious mind to bring all these ideas you are contemplating into being in the way best suited for your particular case. This is a wonderful way to enter into the life more abundant. So this idea is fairly straightforward. This is essentially telling us to think along the terms of life, illumination, inspiration, basically positive thoughts, and not condition them with our own understanding of how reality works. Because the less condition you put on how your desires must manifest, the faster they'll arrive, because you won't be blocking the other routes that are outside of your understanding of how reality works. So the next section: meditation to have the power of faith. So Dr. Murphy ends all of his chapters with one meditation that we can use to our own advantage. And so this one is a generic one that is an affirmation to believe in the power of faith. So this is like a booster of some sort, and so this increases your overall faith in the subconscious, which would translate to you easily using other affirmations, case specific or subject specific affirmations, and you'll notice results, right? So here's the affirmation: The prayer of faith shall save the sick, and God shall raise him up. James chapter 5 verse 15. I know that no matter what the negation of yesterday was, my prayer or an affirmation of truth will rise triumphantly over it today. I steadfastly behold the joy of the answered prayer. I walk all day long in the light. Today is God's day. It is a glorious day for me, as it is lull of peace, harmony and joy. My faith in the good is written in my heart and felt in my inward parts. I am absolutely convinced that there is a presence and a perfect law that receives the impress of my desire now, and that irresistibly attracts into my experience all the good things my heart desires. I now place all my reliance, faith, and trust in the power and presence of God within me. I am at peace. I know I am a guest of the infinite and that God is my host. I hear the invitation of the Holy One saying, "Come unto me, all ye that labor, and I will give you rest." Matthew chapter 11 verse 28. I rest in God, all is well. So from this chapter, we learn different concepts such as letting go, the power of your subconscious mind, and how you should use it over fighting your conscious, using your conscious mind, and several other scenarios of thinking from the end states and combining affirmations, visualizations, and also this subtle difference between trying to solve a problem by thinking of the problem versus thinking from the state of already having solved the problem, like in the case of the woman who wanted to heal her mother of stomach problems, right? So this chapter is quite versatile and covers a lot of different questions, and so you see that most of Dr. Murphy's teachings are very dense and quite practical in their approach. Chapter points to remember. Point 1. To believe is to accept something as true. Belief makes the difference between success and failure, riches and poverty, health and sickness. Believe in the riches of the infinite power within your subconscious and you will experience them. Point 2. When your problems seem overwhelming, break the tension by praying sincerely to someone who is very ill or in deep trouble, and suddenly you will find your own problem solved. Point 3. When praying for a loved one, be sure not to identify with the ailment or any part of the anatomy. Realize that the infinite healing presence is flowing through the loved one as harmony, health, peace, and joy. Visualize the loved one as radiant and happy. Meditate quietly on these truths and pray again when you feel led to do so. Wonders happen as you pray this way. Point 4. Sympathy means to go down into the quicksand with the other, and it does not help the sick person. Having compassion and give the sick person a transfusion of faith, confidence, and love, knowing that with God all things are possible. Point 5. Your thought is creative, and every thought tends to manifest itself. You can direct and steer your thoughts in the same way you steer your car. Thoughts are things. Your thought image of wealth, success, and achievement is the magnet that attracts to you all things that correspond with your thought image. Point 6. The quiet mind gets things done. Tell your body to be still and quiet your mind by thinking of the infinite intelligence of your subconscious, which knows the answer. When your conscious mind is still and your body is relaxed, the wisdom of your subconscious will rise to the surface mind. Point 7. A good executive knows how to delegate authority. You must be a good executive when using your mind. Turn your request over to your subconscious with faith and confidence, and you will get the appropriate response. You know when you've really turned it over because you find yourself at peace. Point 8. You can give up smoking or any bad habit by decreeing freedom and peace of mind, while at the same time imagining a friend or a physician congratulating you on your freedom. As you affirm and envision an antipathy towards tobacco, your subconscious will take over and compel your freedom from the habit. Point 9. Many have discovered the wisdom of turning an acute domestic problem over to the God presence. trusting that divine wisdom and intelligence will bring about the solution that is best for all. The prayer, I let go and let God take over, brings about the perfect answer. Point 10. Liquidate the past and never dwell on old grievances or grudges. The future is your present thinking made manifest. Think regularly and systematically of harmony, beauty, love, peace, and abundance, and you will have a wonderful future. Point 11. We do not own our children. When difficulties arise with a child, pray as follows. I lose my child to God completely. My child is divinely guided in all ways, and divine love takes care of my child. Whenever you think of your child, bless him or her silently by knowing, God loves my child and cares for my child. As you do this, whatever happens will be good. Point 12. Think of your infinite riches within your subconscious mind. Think of harmony, peace, joy, love, guidance, right action, success. All these are principles of life, and as you think of life more abundant, you activate the latent powers within you. Your subconscious will compel you to express the abundant life right here and right now. Thoughts, things. Point 13, and the final point. Use the meditation to secure the great power of faith for yourself. Thank you for sticking around till the end. If you've learned something valuable, leave me a comment below and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Hope you have a great day ahead. See you again in my next video.